Mark had always been a devoted father. He worked hard every day to provide for his daughter, Lily, and never missed a chance to show her love and care. Mark was a simple man with a big heart, and he did everything he could to make sure Lily had the best possible life. But life was not always easy for Mark. His marriage to Linda, Lily's mother, had been struggling for years. The two had grown apart, and the small cracks in their relationship slowly turned into larger problems that were impossible to ignore. The arguments between Mark and Linda became more frequent. They fought over everything: finances, parenting, and even the smallest things. Lily, only a child at the time, watched as her parents' love turned into anger and frustration. It was hard for her to understand what was happening, but she could sense the tension in their home. Mark tried to keep the peace, but nothing seemed to work. He loved Linda, but he loved his daughter even more, and he couldn't bear to see her upset. Eventually, after much pain and disappointment, the couple decided to go their separate ways. Mark thought it would be better for Lily if they both had time apart, away from the constant fighting. He never imagined it would be the beginning of a long, difficult battle for his relationship with his daughter. The divorce was hard on everyone, but it seemed especially cruel to Mark. He had always believed that no matter what happened, he and Lily would remain close. He never imagined that Linda would try to take Lily away from him. Linda, who was hurt and angry after the divorce, decided to use her power in ways that Mark hadn't expected. She made the decision to try and sever Mark's parental rights. The pain Mark felt was unimaginable. How could the woman he had once loved so much do this to him? It wasn't just the loss of a relationship with his wife. It was the thought of losing his daughter. Mark couldn't understand why Linda would make things harder for Lily, but it seemed as though her bitterness had taken over. Mark knew he couldn't just sit back and let this happen. He wasn't going to give up without a fight. He loved Lily too much, and he knew deep down that he was a good father. Mark did everything he could to prepare for the court hearings that would decide the fate of his relationship with Lily. He hired a lawyer, gathered documents, and made sure he was ready to defend himself against Linda's accusations. But even though he was doing everything right, Mark was nervous. How could he fight against a mother who seemed so determined to take everything away? On the day of the hearing, Mark's heart raced. He knew this was his chance to prove to the world, and more importantly, to his daughter, that he was a good father and that he would always be there for her. But as he sat in the cold, sterile courtroom, he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The judge, who listened carefully to both sides, looked over at Mark and then turned his attention to Linda. The moment of truth was coming, and Mark wasn't sure what to expect. Little did Mark know, the real shock was just around the corner, and the story was only just beginning. The courtroom felt cold and tense as Mark sat, waiting for the judge to make a decision. His heart pounded in his chest, and he couldn't stop thinking about Lily. She was everything to him, and the thought of losing her forever was unbearable. Mark had always done his best for Lily, but now it felt like everything was slipping away. Linda, his ex-wife, sat across from him, looking calm and composed. But Mark could see the anger in her eyes. It was clear that she wasn't going to make things easy for him. Linda's lawyer spoke first, presenting evidence that painted Mark in a negative light. They argued that Mark was an unfit father, claiming that he had neglected his responsibilities and wasn't a good influence on Lily. Linda's lawyer used everything they could to build a case against Mark, making him seem like he didn't care about his daughter. The words stung, but Mark knew they weren't true. He had always been there for Lily, doing whatever he could to support her. Still, it was hard to hear those lies being told in front of the judge. Linda then took the stand. She spoke with such confidence, making it sound as though she was the one who had been doing all the hard work raising Lily. She claimed that Mark didn't deserve to have any parental rights because he couldn't be trusted with their daughter's well-being. Mark sat quietly, trying to hold back his emotions. He didn't want to make a scene or argue in front of the judge, but inside he was falling apart. How could Linda say these things when she knew how much he loved Lily? It hurt him deeply, and he couldn't understand why she was doing this. The judge listened carefully to both sides, nodding occasionally as the lawyers presented their arguments. Mark's lawyer did their best to defend him, showing evidence that he had always provided for Lily and had been a loving and responsible father. But it didn't seem to make much of a difference. The more Linda spoke, the more the judge seemed to believe her version of events. It was as though the truth didn't matter. The judge's decision seemed inevitable, and Mark could feel a sense of dread settling over him. When the judge finally spoke, Mark's heart sank. The judge ruled in Linda's favor, agreeing to take away his parental rights. Mark couldn't believe it. All his hopes, all his efforts to prove that he was a good father, had been for nothing. The judge's words echoed in his ears as the decision was announced. Mark felt as though the floor had been ripped out from beneath him. It was like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Linda, on the other hand, looked satisfied with the outcome. She had won, and she seemed to take some kind of pleasure in seeing Mark defeated. Mark wanted to stand up and shout, to fight against what had just happened, but he knew it wouldn't change anything. Instead, he sat there, numb, trying to process what had just occurred. It felt like his world was crashing down, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As the court session ended and everyone began to leave, Mark couldn't help but feel hopeless. He had lost the battle for Lily, and he didn't know how to move forward. But little did he know, this was only the beginning. His daughter, Lily, would soon show him that there was still hope, even in the darkest of times. Mark's world felt like it was falling apart. The ruling in court had crushed him, and for days he couldn't bring himself to do much. He spent his time staring at the walls, his thoughts consumed with what had just happened. How could this be real? How could a judge, someone who was supposed to stand for fairness and justice, make such an unfair decision? He couldn't stop thinking about his daughter, Lily, and how her life was going to change without him in it. Mark loved her so much, and now it felt like he was being ripped away from her. Linda had won, and she was determined to keep him away from their daughter. She had already started making excuses to prevent Mark from seeing Lily, claiming that it was in her best interest. Mark's heart broke every time he thought about it. He tried to call Lily, but Linda always found a way to block his attempts. Sometimes, when he would send her a message, he could tell that Linda was monitoring it and making sure Lily didn't reply. The silence from his daughter was deafening, and it made Mark feel more alone than he had ever felt before. But even in the darkest moments, Mark couldn't give up on Lily. He knew deep down that his relationship with her was not over. He couldn't just walk away. He wasn't going to let Linda take away his chance to be a part of his daughter's life. So he did what he had to do. Mark hired a private investigator to see what was going on in Lily's life when she was away from him. He needed to know the truth. Was she okay? Was she happy? Was she being treated well? The investigator gave Mark regular updates, reporting on how Lily was doing. It was both a relief and a pain to hear about her, knowing that she was out there but unable to be with her. Mark learned that Lily seemed confused and sad, and there were times when she would ask questions about him. It made Mark feel a little better to know that Lily was still thinking of him, but it also hurt to hear that she was struggling without him. He wished so badly that he could be there for her, to tell her everything would be okay, and that he loved her with all his heart. Days turned into weeks, and Mark's frustration continued to grow. He couldn't stand the feeling of powerlessness any longer. The courts had failed him, but he wasn't ready to give up. He began to spend every spare moment thinking of a way to reach Lily, a way to break through the wall Linda had built between them. Mark tried everything. He wrote letters, he sent gifts, and he reached out to friends and family who still had contact with Lily. He needed to get through to her. Though it seemed like a hopeless situation, Mark never stopped trying. Every night, as he sat alone in his apartment, he would think about the girl he loved more than anything in the world. He wasn't going to give up. He couldn't. He had to believe that someday, somehow, he would be able to see Lily again. He held on to that hope tightly, even when everything around him seemed dark. But as time went on, Mark began to see a small, unexpected change. Lily started to reach out to him, just little by little. A message here, a phone call there. Mark couldn't believe it at first, but it was happening. His daughter was slowly finding her way back to him, despite everything Linda had done. It wasn't easy, and Mark knew that their journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, he began to feel a flicker of hope. His bond with Lily wasn't broken, and no matter how hard Linda tried, Mark would never stop fighting for his daughter. Lily had always been a smart and thoughtful girl, but the situation with her parents was starting to weigh on her more than she could handle. She had always loved her dad deeply, and even though she tried to stay loyal to her mother, something about the way things had turned out just didn't sit right with her. She had begun to notice that her mother's version of the story didn't always match up with what she knew to be true about her dad. For months, Lily had struggled with the changes in her life. Living with her mom, with her father suddenly being so far away, had created a hole in her heart that she couldn't ignore. Her mother constantly told her that her father didn't deserve to see her, but deep down, Lily wasn't sure if that was the truth. There were moments when she would think about the good times she had shared with her dad, like when he would help her with her schoolwork, or when they would go to the park together. Those memories filled her with warmth, but they also left her feeling confused and torn. Lily's friends started to notice the sadness in her. She had always been a bright, energetic girl, but lately she seemed quieter, withdrawn. It wasn't like her to keep things bottled up, but she didn't know how to talk about what she was going through. She felt like she couldn't ask her friends for help, and she didn't want to disappoint her mother by telling her how much she missed her dad. Still, as much as Lily tried to push those feelings away, they kept creeping back into her thoughts. She missed him, and the more she thought about it, the harder it became to ignore. One day, while scrolling through her phone, Lily found a message from her dad. At first, she was hesitant to open it. She wasn't sure if she should be talking to him, given everything her mom had said. But something inside her told her that she needed to read it. As she read the words her dad had written, a wave of emotions rushed over her. It was clear he loved her and missed her deeply. He wasn't angry at her mother, and he wasn't trying to make her choose sides. He just wanted to be in her life, to be there for her the way he always had been. He apologized for not being able to see her and promised that no matter what happened, he would always be there for her. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she read the message. She had missed him so much, but now she had a hard time understanding why things had to be so complicated. Her mom had always told her that her dad wasn't a good person, that he wasn't trustworthy. But when Lily thought about it, that didn't match the man she remembered. Her dad had always been kind and caring. He had never done anything to hurt her, so why would her mom say those things? Why would her mom keep them apart? That night, after reading the message several times, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she had been kept in the dark about so much. She began to question everything. She realized that her mom's words might not be the whole truth. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe her mom had been the one who was making things harder than they needed to be. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she couldn't ignore her dad's love for her. He had always been there when she needed him. And even though the situation was messy, she couldn't turn her back on him. In the quiet of her room, Lily made a decision. She was going to reach out to her dad, no matter what it took. She couldn't let her mom's words define her relationship with him. She needed to find out the truth for herself, and maybe, just maybe, she could help her dad find a way back into her life. It wouldn't be easy, but Lily was determined to take the first step. She knew it wouldn't be an instant fix, but her heart told her it was the right thing to do. It was time to stop being afraid and start. Lily's decision wasn't an easy one, but deep down, she knew it was the right choice. She couldn't let fear or doubt stop her from reaching out to her dad. Every time she thought about him, the memories of their happy times together flooded her mind. How he would help her with her homework, or how they would take long walks to the ice cream shop, laughing about silly things. Those memories made her realize just how much she missed him. She had to try. The next day, while her mom was out, Lily took a deep breath and grabbed her phone. Her fingers hesitated for a moment, but she pushed forward and opened the message app. She decided to send a text. "Hi, Dad." It read, "I've been thinking about you. I miss you." As soon as she hit send, her heart raced. She couldn't believe she had actually done it. For so long, she had been afraid of what might happen if she reached out to him, afraid of how her mom would react. But now, there was no turning back. Lily waited anxiously, hoping for a reply, but she wasn't sure what to expect. It felt like time had slowed down as she stared at the screen, hoping her dad would respond. Minutes later, a message came through. Her dad had replied, "Lily, I've missed you so much. I'm so proud of you for reaching out. I've been thinking about you every day, and I want to be a part of your life. I understand if you're not ready to see me yet, but I'll be here whenever you're ready." Lily's heart swelled with emotions as she read his words. She couldn't stop the tears that began to fall. It was like a weight had been lifted off her chest. Her dad hadn't forgotten her. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't blaming her for anything. He just wanted to be there for her, to love her the way he always had. The next few days were a blur of emotions for Lily. She couldn't stop thinking about the message. It was as though a door had been opened, a possibility for a future with her dad that she hadn't allowed herself to imagine. But there was still so much fear inside her. What if her mom found out? What if she made everything harder than it already was? Lily had heard her mom's warnings about her dad for so long, and now she was beginning to question them. Was her mom right? Or was her mom hiding something? Despite the fear, Lily knew that she couldn't keep living in the shadows. She couldn't let her mom control every part of her life. She had a right to decide who she wanted to have a relationship with. And what she wanted more than anything was to rebuild the bond with her dad. She continued to text him, small messages here and there. They would talk about simple things at first, how school was going, what she had been doing in her free time, or what he was up to. But every conversation made Lily feel closer to him, and with each message, her confidence grew. It was like she was finally finding the courage to stand up for herself and her relationship with her dad. One evening, after a particularly long conversation with her father, Lily realized something important. She had to meet him. It was time. She couldn't keep hiding behind her phone, afraid of what might happen. It wasn't just about texting anymore. It was about showing her dad that she was ready to move forward and rebuild their connection. She wanted to see him, to hear his voice, to feel the warmth of his embrace. Lily knew that this wasn't going to be easy. She still had a lot to figure out, and her mom would definitely be angry if she found out. But for the first time in a long while, Lily felt a sense of peace. She had made a choice for herself, and that was something she could be proud of. She was ready to take the next step in finding her way back to her dad. Lily's decision to meet her dad was the start of something big. It felt like the beginning of healing, not just for her, but for both of them. She was nervous, of course. Meeting him after so much time apart, under such complicated circumstances, wasn't going to be easy. But as she sat in her room, looking at her phone, she felt a spark of excitement. She had been thinking about this moment for so long, and now it was finally happening. She took a deep breath and sent him a message. "Dad, I think I'm ready to meet you. How about Saturday afternoon? Can we meet at the park where we used to go? I miss that place." The message was short, but it was enough to tell him what was in her heart. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew this was the right thing to do. Mark's reply came quickly, and his words made her heart flutter with anticipation. "I can't wait, Lily. I've been dreaming of this moment. I'll be there, and we'll talk, just like we used to." The excitement that flooded through her was overwhelming. She had made the choice to take that first step, and now her dad was as eager to see her as she was to see him. The days leading up to the meeting felt like a whirlwind. Lily couldn't stop thinking about it, replaying every possible scenario in her mind. What if things were awkward? What if her dad was different than she remembered? But deep down, She knew it would be worth it. She wanted to see her dad again, to feel the bond they had once shared. And she hoped that they could find a way to reconnect, even after everything that had happened. On Saturday, Lily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She chose her outfit carefully, trying to look casual but comfortable. As the time drew closer, her nerves started to build. She kept checking her phone, wondering if her dad was on his way. Finally, the moment arrived. She stepped out the door, and as she walked toward the park, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. When she arrived, she saw him. Mark was standing by the old oak tree they used to sit under. He was wearing a simple jacket, and his face lit up the moment he saw her. His smile was warm and full of love, and Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had missed that smile more than she had realized. "Lily," Mark called out, his voice filled with joy. He walked toward her, and for a moment, neither of them knew what to say. But then Mark opened his arms, and without thinking, Lily ran to him. She hugged him tightly, feeling the years of separation melt away in that one embrace. It felt so right, so familiar. She had missed him more than she had realized. They pulled back from the hug, and Mark looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice shaky with emotion. "I've missed you so much, Lily. I never stopped thinking about you." Lily smiled, her eyes welling up with tears as well. "I missed you too, Dad. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner." "No, sweetie," Mark said, shaking his head. "It's not your fault. You've had so much going on, and I'm just glad you're here now. We have all the time in the world to catch up." They sat on the bench under the oak tree, talking for hours. At first, their conversation was full of small talk, catching up on the little things, the things that used to feel so normal, but now seemed so important. Mark told Lily about his work, his new hobbies, and how much he had thought about her every day. Lily shared what had been going on in her life, school, her friends, and how much she missed their times together. As they talked, something amazing happened. The tension that had built up over the months melted away, and the bond they had once shared seemed to come alive again. It wasn't just the things they talked about. It was the comfort of being together again, the feeling that no matter how much time had passed, they were still family. When the conversation slowed, Mark took Lily's hand. "You know, Lily, I'm not going anywhere. I'm always going to be here for you. Whatever you need, whenever you need it." Lily smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in so long. "I know, Dad, and I'll always be here for you too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying each other's company. It was the first time in a long time that Lily felt truly at home. The world seemed to fade away, and for the first time in months, she wasn't worried about what would happen next. She knew that, no matter what, this was just the beginning of something beautiful. Together, they would find their way back to each other. Over the next few weeks, Lily and Mark worked on rebuilding their relationship. Every time they met, it felt like they were starting to rediscover the bond that had once seemed so natural. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing memories. Each conversation brought them closer, and Lily felt like she was slowly finding herself again. It wasn't just about being with her dad. It was about healing the parts of her heart that had been broken by the months of uncertainty and pain. Mark was patient with her, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He understood that trust had to be rebuilt, and he didn't want to rush things. He respected Lily's need for time, and with every small step, she grew more comfortable. They began to create new memories together, like going to the local cafe they used to visit or taking walks around the neighborhood. Simple things, but they meant the world to Lily. One afternoon, they were sitting on a bench by the lake, enjoying the quiet of the moment. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden light over the water. Mark turned to Lily, his expression serious but warm. "I want you to know, Lily, that I'm never going to give up on you. No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. She had always known that her dad loved her, But hearing it out loud again, after all this time, made her heart swell with gratitude. She smiled at him, her voice soft but steady. "I believe you, Dad. I think I'm ready for more. I want us to be a family again." Mark's eyes brightened, and a tear slipped down his cheek. "You don't know how much that means to me." The air between them felt lighter now, filled with the promise of something better. Lily knew that things wouldn't be perfect, and the road ahead would still have its challenges. But for the first time, she felt hopeful. She realized that their relationship, though damaged, could be rebuilt. She wasn't afraid anymore. She knew that love, patience, and time could heal the wounds they both carried. As days turned into weeks, the bond between father and daughter grew stronger. They talked about everything. Small things like what they had for dinner, and bigger things, like the lessons they had learned from their struggles. Mark always encouraged Lily to share her feelings, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt free to speak her mind without fear of judgment. But it wasn't just their conversations that made the difference. Mark also took action. He showed up for every important moment in her life, whether it was attending a school event or simply being there when she needed someone to talk to. He proved that he was committed to being the father she needed, and Lily appreciated it more than she could express. Yet, despite their progress, there were still moments of uncertainty. Lily sometimes wondered what would happen if her mom found out about their growing connection. She had been warned for so long that her dad wasn't a safe person to be around. Would her mom understand, or would she feel betrayed? It was a question that lingered in the back of Lily's mind. But for now, Lily chose to focus on the present. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She was learning to trust her instincts and trust the love she had for her dad. They were building something real, and nothing else mattered as much as that. One evening, as they were walking home from the park, Mark turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Lily, I know we've been through a lot, and I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You're stronger than you think." Lily smiled up at him, her heart full. "Thanks, Dad. I think I'm finally starting to believe that, too." They walked in silence for a moment, their footsteps in sync, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. It was clear that their journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. But with each step, they were writing a new chapter of their story, one where love and trust were guiding them forward. As the weeks passed, Lily continued to grow more confident in her decision to rebuild her relationship with her dad. The bond between them deepened, and with each passing day, it felt more like they were starting fresh, like a new beginning after a long and painful chapter. Despite the challenges, both of them were determined to make it work. They had learned that love, forgiveness, and patience were the keys to healing. But even as things seemed to be moving in the right direction, Lily still struggled with her mom's disapproval. One afternoon, Lily found herself in a familiar position, sitting on the porch, thinking deeply. She had come to realize that the road to full healing wasn't just about fixing things with her dad. It was also about figuring out how to handle her relationship with her mom. Her mom had never been fond of her dad, and even though Lily had made the decision to connect with him again, she was still torn. She didn't want to betray her mom, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the truth of her own feelings. She loved both of them, and they each had a place in her heart. Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone rang. It was a call from her mom. Lily hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of how this conversation might go. She had been trying to figure out the right time to talk to her mom about everything, but the perfect moment never seemed to come. Now, it seemed like it was time. "Hi, Mom," Lily said, her voice calm but nervous. "I need to talk to you about something." Her mom's voice on the other end of the line sounded cautious. "What's going on, Lily? You sound serious." Lily took a deep breath. "I've been seeing Dad. We've been spending time together, and it feels like things are better between us. I know you probably won't like it, but I want you to know that it's what's right for me." There was a long pause, and Lily could hear the tension in her mom's voice when she finally spoke. "Lily, I don't understand." After everything that's happened, why would you go back to him? He hurt you. He's not the person you think he is." Lily closed her eyes, gathering her thoughts. This wasn't going to be easy, but she had to be honest. "I know you have your reasons for what you believe, Mom. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I need you to understand that my relationship with Dad is something I have to decide for myself. He's always been there for me, and I believe that he wants to be in my life again." Her mom's tone softened slightly, but there was still a sense of frustration in her voice. "I just want to protect you, Lily. I don't want you to get hurt." "I know, Mom," Lily replied, her voice steady. "I understand that you're trying to protect me. But I've thought about it, and I'm not going to let fear control my decisions anymore. I'm trying to build something with Dad, and it's what I feel is right for me." There was another pause, but this time it felt less heavy. Her mom's voice was quieter when she spoke again. "I still don't agree with it, but I guess I can't stop you. You're old enough to make your own choices." Lily felt a weight lift off her shoulders as she heard those words. She had expected a more intense reaction, but this was a start. It wasn't perfect, and there was still a lot of work to do, but she knew her mom was trying, and that meant a lot to her. "Thanks for understanding, Mom," Lily said softly. "I hope that one day you'll see that this is what's best for me. But I still love you, and I'll always be your daughter." Her mom's voice was quieter now, filled with a mixture of resignation and love. "I love you too, Lily. I just want you to be happy." As the call ended, Lily felt a sense of relief. She had taken the first step toward healing her relationship with her mom, even though it wasn't going to happen overnight. She knew there would be more conversations, more challenges ahead, but for now, she felt like she had made the right decision. That evening, when she met up with Mark at the park, she told him about the conversation. Mark listened quietly, then smiled at her with pride. "I'm proud of you, Lily. It's not easy to stand up for what you believe in, but you're doing it. You're doing it with so much strength." Lily smiled back, feeling the warmth spread through her. "Thanks, Dad. I think I'm finally starting to understand what it means to choose happiness for myself." They spent the rest of the evening together, talking and laughing, knowing that the road ahead would be filled with both challenges and joys. But with every step they took, they were proving that love could overcome the hardest obstacles. Together, they were rebuilding a future that was full of hope and possibilities, and Lily knew, deep down, that she had made the right choice in choosing both her dad and herself. The journey was far from over, but it was a journey she was no longer afraid to walk.